Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! You're getting comfortable! Comfortability kills dream! So get up and go get those games!
Voices in the soil started calling our names. Stories carved inside and yet the blood remains. Stemming from the earth, rising in the air. Stories once forgotten, now spoken clear. Shadows tried to hide us, we're the light that broke through. We rise from the ashes with very truth. Since lines we raised, names washed away. But the fire in our spirits never lost its way. Black earth remembers and the river still prove. People stand with the buried truth. No more of your lies, we rise to say. Echoes of the past still guide our way. From the tears they shed to the seeds we sow. The light of our story will always show. We pull back the veil on eternal truth. We lift our voices with the buried truth.
Wake up! You're getting comfortable!
Hey y'all, welcome. Try to get it together. There we go. We're doing an interview with Lavors today on genealogy. So you can go ahead and introduce yourself to anybody who may not know of you, because I know you've been off the app for a while.
Yeah, been about 9 months. But my name is Lavors. I'm an Nagadesh Indian. I do genealogy here and there for everybody on the app, on Twitter, on Instagram, and all that. I've been doing this for about a couple years. My family been embedded into this fight or this argument for decades now. So this has been something that's been a part of my lineage and heritage for about 50 years now, or about probably 40, 50 years.
So for those who don't know, me and Lavors, we met probably about 2 years ago on this app.
Yeah,
Probably about 2 years ago. And he has helped me with some of my genealogy as well. And some of the things I learned after some of the people on this app about genealogy, I have learned from him as well. Seeing documents I have never seen, I have witnessed him in 4K do other people's genealogy and find documents on the spot and verify that that is that person's ancestor and explain how it lines up. So if you need help with genealogy, this will be one person I would highly recommend off the app. Lavors, you can hit him up in his DMs, or I'm not sure if he'll send you what do you want them to do in your Telegram or in your DMs. How would you want for them to reach out to you?
So people usually reach out through DMs or Instagram. My Instagram is Gato_Creole, so you can hit me up there, or just hit me up on here. My Telegram, I don't know how to give people that information, so that's something I have to still work on, because that's my private number. But just reach me how you can reach me. I got another page too. It's Keith Lavors. That's my full first name. So Keith_Lavors. So you can find me here or there.
So what got you into genealogy?
More so just seeing how a lot of people were trying to figure out their lineage. First, for me, I wanted to confirm everything. I'm all about facts. I'm all about paperwork. I want to make sure everything is precise. So I'm a perfectionist, that's just my heart. So, but that's what got me into my genealogy personally. I started finding out that everything that my ancestors, my great grandmother, I explained to us before she passed away in 2005, was all accurate. So, that's what made me get deeply embedded into it. But what made me start doing everybody else's personal genealogy was just hearing all the arguments on TikTok more so, and just seeing how people would push on us because we're trying to tell our stories. And, the racism and all of that on this app just made me just want to do my job and my part for our community.
Yes, we encountered a lot of racism on this app, y'all. Before I met Lavors, he was also kicking it with some of the Native Americans I wouldn't say as in like buddy buddy, but you know, the people that was in his tribe per se, correct? But not like the races that was on this app.
I actually I went to a lot of Native American like panels to do not necessarily debates, but just have a conversation. I wanted to hear from their point of view, and then, you know, just try to tell them from my point of view, my perspective. Some heard me, some didn't. I've witnessed a lot of them, tell me their personal stories and how they got into their indigenous heritage, quote unquote, So
Mm-hmm.
I've learned a lot over the years, and I have a lot of secrets to share with my people. I'm all about my people first. So me talking to them does not mean I'm just switching sides and shit. No, my people come first always, and I was in those rooms to help my people, and a lot of them were like distant relatives of mine as well.
And I can vouch for that. Um, over the 2 years going on three now, he has always been about his people first. I have witnessed him curse out Native Americans for coming at us sideways on this app. Um, Lavors, what will be one thing of advice that you would give someone that is starting off on genealogy and having them understand what is genealogy when it's their first time ever hearing it?
Your genealogy is your family history. That's your heritage. That's who you are. That comes first before any DNA test. I think you should do your genealogy before you do anything else. You don't even have to use ancestry.com and all that to do your genealogy. You can actually write this down. There are physical copies or physical books you could purchase called family trees. And you can find it on Amazon too, mind you. But you could just fill out all your family information right then and there. So I have a personal copy that's personally mine, and I have one on ancestry.com, so I can get all the records and details and stuff like that.
Yeah, I had 2 years ago had this notebook that was just completely empty, and when I went down to Meridian, Mississippi for my last family reunion, I got another one coming up next month. Um, I had all of my elders, and not just the elders, but people my generation too, write down their bloodline, even their children, because I told them I'm building a family tree so I could plug everybody in and share it to them. And then I just recently found out that I have two of my lines having a family reunion at the same time. So when my brother was like, "You going to this family reunion?" I'm like, "No, I didn't even know about that one, but I'm going to this one." And they're literally in the same week, like back to back. So I think that's a very great idea to have a book that you can have your family physically write it down, or you can write it down for them, depending on how old they are. If they're not able to, the eyesight's not as good. Because I did that too, but I didn't know that they sold actual books on Amazon. I'm gonna have to get one, and I can transfer everything over into that. That would be pretty dope.
Yeah, it's a little bit more organized. I have a personal book that's just, a regular notebook that I just written in too. So, hey, do it how you can. If you don't want to purchase that, don't purchase it. But it's something to keep it organized if you want to do it, you know, just in a perfectionist way. Not only that, like C3 said, talk to your family, your elders. They have all the gems. Genealogy is all about speaking to the elders. So speak to your elders, speak to the oldest auntie, the oldest grandma, whoever the oldest person in your family. One of my oldest members had just passed away last year, but she lived up until 110. So her parents were my great 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 grandfather's um brothers and sister, sorry. So from her information, we was able to get that information from who they were and how they were growing up and all that. So, just talk to somebody, talk to your people. They're there to support you. Genealogy, ancestry.com, it goes a long way, but it's nothing like talking to your own family.
Um, When someone is starting off their genealogy, how should they start it off?
Like that. So I know that some people, they have family groups on Facebook. Go there, look at all the stuff that people post. Talk to your elders first. If you don't have that, say if you were adopted, or um there's not many elders in your family that don't know much about what was going on, or they want to keep secrets. I do have family members that kept secrets, and I found out later what was really going on. So if that's the case, um look at the records precisely, make sure everything adds up. Make sure you dot your T, cross your T's and dot your I's everywhere and every which way. The dates have to match, the location has to match, the names have to match. You know, just check it. Check it 3 times, check it 5 times. I've done my tree multiple times just to make sure I got it right. And I'm at the point where I have 14,000 people on my tree. My tree has been done accurately. My tree is so accurate that other genealogists within Louisiana, they contact me for just to look at it, or for some support, or a guideline to do Louisiana trees.
Yes. Well, I remember when I first met you, you was telling us how you mainly was doing some people trees that was in Louisiana. You was excited to branch out to other people and different tribes that they come from, and you can see different records. So when coming to the records outside of census records, birth certificates, and death certificates, what other records could they possibly look for?
Baptismal records, church records, those are always helpful. Marriage records, um, you said death records.
Mm-hmm.
Bibles. Most of the time, people will put their information in a Bible. So if you could find that, that's gold. Um, Obituaries, those are very helpful. If you knew it or not, you can actually use ChatGPT to help you. So that's another way to help you out. But that's with cautious, do that when you're at the level, or everything is accurate, you just want to confirm it. You could just plug it into chat, and then it will be able to, do its little magic for you. So I've done all of that and some more. I have some other stuff in my sleeve, but I ain't gonna give y'all everything. Y'all just come to me and I'll do it.
Mhm. That is right. Yeah, this is like a magician telling all of their tricks, right? So
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. But that's a great start for those who is just getting into genealogy. The number one important thing, like before I said, is speak to your elders. And then when you're doing your genealogy, still speak to your elders so they can correct or confirm or say, hey, like for me, for instance, when I was at my family reunion 2 years ago, went to one of my cousins and I had her look at the ones that was we share the same grandparents, but my uncles, she we was cousin through an uncle of ours, my uncle, her dad. So she was looking through it. She was like, yeah, all these is my dad's siblings. And then when she was going through it, she said, "You're missing one. He never made it to a census because he was born after the last census that you have." So I plugged in all the information because she gave it to me. You may never know. You may have people who come to your family reunions with written down genealogies as well. I have gotten that from some of my folks as well. Plug that into my tree. Um, so for those who have done all of that and they hit a roadblock, what do you suggest that they do when they hit a roadblock?
Check the census. Um, Black families, for one, we always live near each other. Check the census, the earliest census, look around, see who was living in that area that have the same last name. It's 5 out of 10. That would be your ancestor. It's a 50-50 chance, so Just plug it in, figure out if it match, if it don't match, add it as a cousin, add it as a, a distant relative or uncle or whatnot. That's what I usually do, and that usually help. If you can get in contact with a genealogist, do that. That always helps. Make sure this genealogist have the same you have the same principles. Y'all understand, what y'all know what I'm trying to say. Make sure it's not a Pan-African doing your genealogy. That's all I'm trying to say. You
Mhm.
know, just make sure their principles and their upbringings aligns with yours. Um, Other things I would say is pay attention to everything. Look at all the death records. Find siblings. Look at their death records. I always say look at the oldest sibling death records and the youngest sibling death records. Typically, they will have the parent's name. The youngest sibling usually lives near the parent or live with the parent, and there's always a middle child that stays with the parent or stay with them for the longest. I've seen these records so many times to know this is the rhythm. This is how our families move. So you either have the oldest or the youngest staying with the parent. It's sometimes the middle child, but it's not always. But these are just things that I've seen over the years.
So what about when people's doing their genealogy and they're looking at these census records and they're seeing that it's matching their oral history of their family staying in a certain area for a very long time? Like, let's say, for instance, Georgia. They're showing that they're in Georgia for 300 years, and then they get to one family, and on the census record, like that's what they was told. They've been there for a long time. Let's just say like 300 years. But let's say that they're looking in the late 1800s or maybe early 1900s, and they're seeing that they have an ancestor who they're documented as staying in Georgia 1930, in Georgia 1920, in Georgia 1910, and then in 1900 it jumps to North Carolina. What would you say that means for people who come across that the location of where they was born changes in different time periods?
Actually, I have a if you would have used Mississippi, it would have been great. But if you are
It,
from
Mississippi,
Mississippi,
you can say that for Mississippi. Georgia
yeah,
was just the first thing that popped up in my head.
because it makes sense. Okay, so if you were from Mississippi, your family always been there, and then you see Georgia, that's typically because at that time Mississippi was called Georgia. Mississippi didn't get its name until later on. So that's one reason. A second may be if your family did live in Georgia all that time and they did come from South Carolina, first check the records. Look at all the siblings, make sure it all aligns. If they all say North Carolina or South Carolina or whatever, then it's that typically happen. We all know about um prisoners of wars and indigenous servitude and people being moved all around. That happened. I've seen it for my ancestor. One of my ancestors, she came from Virginia, moved to Alabama, transferred to Louisiana to be a slave. During that time, she was reclassified. So in Virginia, she was Powhatan and or I believe it's Powhatan. I believe that's what it was written down. And then in Alabama, she became Indian slave. That was on the record. And then in Louisiana, she became a negress or Negro. So I've seen that. It happens, you know. But just check the records, make sure it all aligns before you start adding stuff. I've also seen this too. You will have one sibling, it will list their parent coming from Africa. But if you look at all the other siblings, it will tell you exactly where they came from: Georgia, Alabama, sometimes the Caribbean, sometimes Brazil. Just do your research and make sure everything aligns. Don't just go with the first narrative. Check everybody and make sure everybody's saying the same exact thing.
Yes, I agree. I have found in my trade, I was looking at, I had a hint from one of my grandmothers, and I'm looking at it, and come to find out, there's a newspaper of her. she's in a newspaper, but it wasn't her obituary. It was her sister's obituary. But her name was listed as one of the people that she either survived, that she was still living, or she had already preceded her in death, and her sister was joining her. It was one of the two. But the death certificate for that sister had her labeled as a negress. So, do you think that anybody that was labeled as a negress is either American Indian or African descent? This woman was also enslaved.
Negres, Negroes, Negros, Grief, Sambos, um, the list goes on and on, man. I'm going to say this from what I've seen. 9 out of 10, they're indigenous to America. That one is Moorish. Okay, I can't speak for everybody, and I can't say everybody is indigenous. I can't say every line is indigenous. I've seen, for me, not necessarily me, but for every other tree, I've seen Moors. I've seen a German Moor. I've seen a Spanish Moor. It's a lot of Spanish Moors. If you come from the Central America, the Caribbean, you see Spanish names, that's more than likely Moorish. So look at, just dot your I's and cross your T's. That's all I'm going to say.
I found
Oh, but you said, oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
African. As far as an African, um, you're not going to find any in the 1700s. You're not going to find any in the 1600s. You're just not. I'm sorry. In the 1800s, 1900s, probably. And hear me out. It might say Africa, but it doesn't mean they came from Africa. Always look at the records and make sure everything is accurate. But if it was an African, it would say Guinea and other stuff. I'm also finding out that the Guineas came from Brazil. So just look at your records, make sure everything is aligning with what your family told you.
I have found that in my tree. One of my grandfathers, who was enslaved, um, when I was talking to my cousin, she's the one who gave me this oral history of him being enslaved. And I asked her, I was like, have you heard of him being African or his parents coming from Africa? Because on the census, they have his parents labeled as Africa, but he was born in Alabama in 1825. She said, no, we never heard that. All we know, he's American. But he was enslaved. I know he lived in Mississippi and Alabama. Then Ancestry give a hint of a slave ship record. I look up the boat, and it had to do with the intercontinental slave trade. So when something like that pops up, what advice would you give to someone that also have that in their tree?
Um, I've seen this one time. And I seen this on my personal tree where there was a person, their last name was Anago. And Anago, you will assume that's African, or it sounds different. It doesn't sound American or something that we're used to. And I found out that person came from Brazil. So just, if you could, okay, this is when GPT comes into handy. I know it's AI, y'all. I know, but it can be useful. So plug in names, try to figure out what they mean, where they come from, who are those people, why would they call, why was that person named that? So that ancestor, the Nargo, I found that was a tribe from Brazil. And they like to paint the Nargos as these Yorubans because they actually took the Nargos from Brazil to Africa. So just search up everything, use your resources, make sure everything is accurate. Look into the tribes that the people possibly came from. Look into their names and see the meanings of those if you can. Check out the regions that they may have came from. If it says on those those slave ships or the slave documents, it will tell you where the person came from. Now, there are instances where it may say wild place. I've seen it in French. It's brut. So if you see brut, it doesn't mean Africa. It just means a place where people were free. So that could be the Amazon. That could be the Caribbean islands. That could be somewhere in the Americas. So just look at everything precisely. Make sure everything adds up. Find siblings that has the same story. Look into their ancestry and heritage. We typically like to look at our personal lines, but our sisters, our ancestors, sisters, and brothers, they matter as well.
Hmm. Yes, they do. Because you may find a record that will tie to your grandparents through your aunties and uncles. So that's
Right.
really important. So I had did that, what you suggested with Chat GBT. I had typed it in. I was like, why is it saying Africa? Because like you mentioned before, if the person actually came from Africa, is going to say something else. It's just not going to say African or Africa. I've seen records where it said South Africa, it said Nigeria, it said Guinea, it said, the different countries, Liberia and or Sierra Leone. And what ChatGPT gave me was, with this person being formerly enslaved, the census enumerator, if they didn't know the parents or where the origin of that person was, they used Africa as a placeholder. And after that, I had looked it up to see if it was true, and lo and behold, ChatGPT was right. That's what a lot of census enumerators did at that time. So how many records do you think someone should have as concrete evidence that that ancestor is African if they're looking for their African ancestor?
All depends on the amount of children they had. So we had big families. A lot of my ancestors had 10 plus children. So I need 10 plus records saying the same exact thing. However many children they had, all those records have to align. All those records have to say the same thing. And I mean every child. I'm not talking about half of them. Every child have to say the same exact thing. Reason why is because, like you said, people just added shit. People just said shit. People don't know this, but Pan-Africanism actually started in the 1790s. So anything after that is diluted with that Africanism crap that our great ancestors were fed. So check your records, make sure everything aligns. I'm going to keep saying that throughout this interview and make sure everything aligns. If it don't, I'm going to check it. I'm playing.
Oh, that's right. Because there's people on this app that's checking people's genealogies. They fact checking people's genealogies without the person's consent. So knowing that, what would you say for someone that's came across a record that's 10 years off of the person's birth year that they're supposed to have been born around? And it says, like, okay, like for example, I'm gonna just go use my ancestor for example. He was born in 1825 in Alabama, and let's say there's another record that pops up, and it's saying that he was born 10 years later, but on this record it says that he's African. Should someone count that as their record, even though the birth year is 10 years off from what you know? And seeing the lineup with other records?
No, go with the oldest record. I always say go with the record that has the parents. Mainly because this will have the child's age, if they're 3, 4, whatever. So I just go off of that. Your parents know you better, so go off of that. Reason why is because this was a time when we didn't have computers, we didn't have a calendar to look at or phones or whatnot. My grandpa, one of his sisters, her actual birthday isn't the birthday that she have on her records. So um her birth, her documents, it says a whole different date than what she was actually born, because in those times people couldn't go to the doctor and register their children, on that same day. They had to go a couple months later or whatnot. So go by the oldest record if you can. Speak to your elders. Look at obituaries. That always helps. If you can, find my grave or find a grave, whatever that website is. I think it's Find a Grave. Use that. Use that. Find a Grave is your best friend when it comes to looking at dates and making sure you got all that accurate. Use that. Yes, it's a lot of people put in information. It can be changed. It can be doctored. So go with your intuition. If they have pictures, use that. Pictures speak more volume than words.
That's where I found the pictures for my auntie that was labeled as a negress. Her dad was also enslaved, which would have been my grandmother and my auntie's father. He was also enslaved. My grandmother was labeled as a colored. I'm seeing all the labels that the Indians was given. So, and someone that obviously had to be a distant relative of mine posted the receipts on Find a Grave, and that's how and then that link popped up on Ancestry, and that's how I came across it.
Yeah, Find a Grave helped me a lot. There were graves in California and LA. There's a lot of graves that are closed off to the public, so we can't go in there. So a lot of my ancestors, I have to go to Find a Grave just to look at their plates and stuff like that. But use that to your advantage. Not only that, but obituaries. If you could talk to your elders, and get obituaries. My grandma, she has a photo album with all our obituaries. So if I need a great great grandma obituary, I just go into that shit and I just grab it out of there. So use that if you can. Keep those obituaries. Those are gold. Don't throw them away. First, we supposed to be creating little well, maybe just my tribe, but we created little like
Like
shrines and put our huh?
like scrapbooks.
Not a scrapbook. We have a shrine and we put all our ancestors' pictures up in that. So you could do that with them if however you please. That's what we do in my household.
Well, speaking of your tribe, you say you come from the Nacogdoches tribe. Where is that historically located at? For those who never heard of your tribe before.
Those are Natchitoches.
Mm-hmm.
We are from North Louisiana. So from Natchitoches Parish all the way to I think Caddo Parish. So we go up pretty far. We're part of the Caddo bands. So you have the Nebadachis, the Hassanai, the Natchitoches. We have the Upper Natchitoches and the Lower Natchitoches. You got the Aisha. You have the Ade. You have the Gadawashos. There's a multitude of tribes. There's 25 of us, 25 bands.
Oh, that's a lot. 25 bands. For someone that's looking for their band, let's say like you was looking for, obviously I know you know your band because you are involved in your tribe, but let's say you was looking for your band, how would you find that in your genealogy?
Great,
It's
beautiful question. I love it. Um, People don't like when I say this, but it's helpful. My family have been on Natchitoches lands for thousands of years. And then I have ancestry coming from other places, other parts of Louisiana. I'm also Knessetene. I have Apache ancestry, which is that Knessetene. I have Gado, I mean Choctaw. I'm so sorry. I have Choctaw, I have Powhatan, I have Nebadachis, Hassanais. So I have a multitude of tribes, but I'm a Natchitoches today because all of those people were sent to Natchitoches enslaved, and they created me and they created my family. So That's how I became a Nagadish, because of that. All of the people coming together into this one territory. So yes, I am affiliated with other tribes because all of us are not just one tribe, but wherever your family lived at for the most of your genealogy, go by that. If your family didn't live there and they came from another territory, go by that. Look into the territory history, look at your family surnames, and if they connect to any of the tribes in that area. They wrote books about our people. Look into those articles or those journals and see if your ancestors were mentioned. My ancestors were mentioned, which is why I could go back to the 1600s. My ninth, 10th, and 11th great grandparents are all mentioned in those journals because the French, they took a liking to my ninth great grandmother. So she was a concubine to the French, sadly. But that's her heritage, or that's my heritage. That's her story. Um, I'm not going to erase her because of what she had to go through. She was raped multiple times to create I'm so sorry, multiple times to create my people. So I have to uplift her story and tell her story as much as I can. Um, but I say that to say, look into all your ancestors, love and cherish all their stories, find out who they were. All of that matters. Once you find that, then you can start talking about tribes. But find your personal ancestors, figure out who they are, what's their name, say their names. That's all they want to hear you say. In Nakadish, we have a lighting ceremony. We put all our ancestors' names in the Cane River and we light it. Every day this happens. So we're not just talking about our ancestors. We're living the life that they wanted to, which is why we created our tribe, which is why we're enrolled, because this is what they wanted us to do. People in my ancestry, they were unalive because of the stuff we talk about on TikTok today. You know,
Mhm. That is a fact right there. Um, so knowing that for people to go by their bands based off of where their people lived at for the majority of their life. Like for me, a lot of my family was in Choctaw area, Mississippi, Alabama area, has some in Tennessee. That's mainly where my family was from. So when people would ask me my band, I was like, well, my people would have been considered Mississippi Choctaw. But when people hear me say that, they think I'm claiming the Jenna band of Mississippi and Choctaws. So is there a difference between a time period when during a certain time period the people will be considered these type of peoples based off of location and the band in today's time?
I'm glad you asked this question. And this goes back to some of the stuff that we brought out when we were, educating people on the round table. Um, but we all know about Asians to Indians and all of that. Um, that history happened here. It didn't just happen in Brazil. There were Filipinos brought. They were brought from the Caribbean and they moved into Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. They married some of our women. They married white women, white tea women. They had children. Some of those children stayed in those areas. Some of those children moved to Oklahoma. I've seen it in people's genealogy. I don't gotta lie. The paperwork is all out there for you to find for yourself. I could give you the names. Just ask. But that happened. When did it happen? It happened numerous of times throughout years between throughout the 1800s, sorry, as late as the 1900s, early 1900s. So it just look at who says who they are and just look at their personal genealogy. You'll figure out who they were. Many of us married into these people, into these families to create these new Jennas and these new Homas and all these other tribes that's in Louisiana, Mississippi. A lot of them are Filipino. A lot of them are white tea. A lot of them are German. It's all about the ancestry, who they are personally. As for us, one of my cousins, she made this proposal years ago. We create our own table. We don't need to be in somebody else's table and be classified under their rules and deal with they bull mess. We can create our own. These records aren't just theirs. It's ours too. And with these records, we create our own tribes. You know, you don't need the BIA. You don't need this and that and the third. All you really got to do, and what my family has done, is buy our land and live on it. You know, after a while, we start asking Louisiana to accept us as a tribe, and it came about. You know, but do what you wish you want. You know, do as you please. Do what your ancestors want. I'm not here to tell you to enroll. This is my path. This is not yours. You know, figure out what you and your family want to do and abide by those rules and those customs and those principles.
I agree with that, because not everybody wants to enroll in these tribes. But you had mentioned the records, how they was ours. What would you have to say to encourage the community when they come across these lives, on whether it's on here on TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, or X, Facebook, Instagram, any other social media platforms, and they start to hear people say, well, those are the European records, they're not your records. What would you say to combat that, to keep people encouraged in doing their genealogy instead of swaying to a DNA test? Because from my experience, that's what people would say, to try to convince people to do a DNA test instead of digging into their family history.
Well, it's not just about what the records say, it's what my family confirmed as well. You could always say that. You know, I asked my cousin, is this accurate? I asked my great great grandma, her sister, best friend on the other side, and she said it was accurate. Talk to people, you know, talk to people. Fuck what, and again, the records don't tell you everything. We all know the saying, mama's baby, daddy's maybe. Shit like that happen. I'm just keeping it real. A lot of stuff like that happen. Talk to your ancestors. Make sure all of that's accurate. You know, the white tea man records don't have everything, you know. So some people are right when they say that, you know, well, this record won't confirm this, that, and the third. Yeah, that's true. But my family, they confirmed it. If you want to do a DNA test, and there's a way to do it, I always say, pay attention to the matches. Fuck the results. The results don't mean anything. That's that's the willy-nilly stuff that they give you just to make you happy. The real stuff is all the people that you connect to. You could use those people to make sure your tree is accurate.
So when using DNA for your genealogy, it's best to use that just to connect to your distant relatives to get more of your oral history and confirmation on your tree.
Yes. So Ancestry has this tool called Through Lines. So through Lines, it will match you with all your relatives. Well, it will use your tree, use your DNA, and try to figure out how you relate to everybody that you match with in your DNA. So this is where the science becomes real. You know, all the other stuff is just to make you feel happy. This stuff is the real stuff that makes you want to think. It makes you want to make sure everything on your tree is right. You know, I don't like putting my family business out there, but since we sharing and I have to do an interview, my grandmother, we just found this out 4 months ago, 5 months ago. But my grandmother dad isn't her biological dad. And it was bittersweet to find that out. You know, she's almost 60 something, you know? But because of DNA tests, we was able to confirm who her actual father was, which is actually her godfather. So it's a whole little thing going on.
Family
You know,
secrets.
it's family
Everybody got
secrets.
them.
Yeah. And but from that family secret, we were able to confirm her true lineage and her true ancestry. And all of that, it didn't erase a line or didn't make, it made her, it told her full story. You know, she's still a Davis, but now she got an extra sister, a blood sister that's not only just a god sister, but a blood sister. So just look at your information, use your DNA. If you have it, if you've done it, you could use those through lines to make sure everything is on point. I do it all the time. There's times where I have to go back and check and make sure all my stuff is accurate. I have 14,000 people on my tree. It's hard. It gets hard to keep up with a lot of them, but I do it so no one else can tell me my story.
Yes, your story is very important. Everybody's individual story is very important. So when it comes to family members that were adopted, um, and let's say the person knows that they're adopted, how can they go about tracing that line for their genealogy?
That's the hard part. And this is when DNA is a must. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier. You will have to rebuild your tree from scratch. So use your closest relatives when you look at your DNA, look at the through lines if you can. That won't be filled out because you don't have anybody on your tree. So what you'll do is you'll look at your cousins, see how they're matching with each other. Pick an ancestor that is matching all of them and rebuild your tree that way. You may not know which person you come from, and that's the hard part, but at least you're able to pinpoint where you may align or pinpoint your family lineage. Once that occur, once you're able to find somebody that's living, try to contact that person. That's scary. That's strange. We call people weirdos for doing that in LA. But you have to be a weirdo for a second so you can find out who you are. So go on Facebook, be a little stalker, put in them names, try to figure out who you can and all that. Try to get some pictures if you can, you know, but do it. Um, this is a personal story. My grandma, her father left when my great grandmother passed away. I don't know why he left, but he left. So my grandmother, sorry, she didn't grow up with her father and she didn't know anything about his heritage and stuff like that. So that line had to start from scratch. We knew his name and stuff like that. We knew he passed away because my auntie Cherie, she went in to his funeral after like connecting to his one of his sisters. So we knew he passed away and all of that, but we didn't know much about his heritage and who he was and who his parents were and all that. At least I didn't. So I started from scratch. I used my DNA to rebuild my tree, and I got in contact with one of his sisters, and that's when she told me that Monty Cherry knew him and all of that. I didn't know. So I found out information from them. But just talking to people, be a weirdo for a second. Get on Facebook. A lot of people have Facebooks. Use that to your advantage. There are family groups on Facebook you could always join and get into, and you could find members through there.
I had did that. What was it, last year? Sometime I think it was over the summer of last year or the year before last. It was. I just know it was over the summer, and Ancestry kept trying to match me with somebody on our trees matching because of my one grandmother, my grandmother Marietta, which Lavors knows about because he helped me find some documents for her a while ago. And so I just decided to message him on Ancestry, and I was like, "Hey, I'm your cousin. We share this person. This is our grandmother. To this line, I broke it down. Then he hit me back up, and we added each other on Facebook. And then come to find out, his dad's brother, which is our uncle, I was already friends with him on Facebook, and so we was talking. And so our uncle's um, father is my grandmother's brother, which is his grandfather. And then from there, um, we shared great grandparents with each other. So we've been collaborating on our genealogy, um, getting, and because of that, I was able to get some more oral history just from that branch alone. And I just never knew that I was already friends with him on Facebook, because people, when families see other family members add family members, they just click the add button, and I just add them. I'm like, oh, I see you're friends with my auntie, my grandma, my brother. Okay, let me add you. You must be family. And so that helps too. Like Lavors said, gotta be a little weird. I ain't gonna lie, it was weird. It was kind of weird. I'm like, hope you don't think this is creepy. Hopefully he responds back, and he responded back in like 30 minutes. So you'll never know what you would get.
You'll be surprised how many people get excited just to hear from family.
I definitely did. I
Yeah.
definitely got excited. So we've
Mhm.
been collaborating, trying to find if our grandmother Marietta, sometimes we call her Mary E. If anybody have a picture of her, if she had a Bible, if anybody still have one. So we've been reaching out to different branches that still connects to this grandmother in particular, and trying to figure that out. But it's a hit or miss, because some people respond and some people don't.
Absolutely right. Some people do, some people don't. If that person don't, try another person. I always say the oldest sisters, the younger sisters, the big brothers, they tend to be more interested in genealogy. Um, and that's just something I'm noticing. Everybody's different. Everybody's different. Play your cards right. Let your intuition lead you.
hmm Um, that's fact. Let your intuition lead you on who you can talk to, or even if the person don't want to speak, um, see who's willing to speak. So what advice do you give to someone that's trying to talk to a grandmother or a grandfather, or auntie or uncle that lived during, let's say, segregation and Jim Crow era, and they're trying to get oral history and they don't want to speak on it? What's the best advice that you can give to them to get past that roadblock on their genealogy with their oral history?
Good question. Speak to siblings. If their sibling don't want to talk, another probably would. You know, um, if siblings, cousins, talk to somebody. Somebody gonna, open their mouth and start speaking to you. They might not share everything with you, but as long as you get a taste or a snippet of it, my grandpa always said this: you don't need to know everything, but you need to know a little bit of everything, and that's enough. So take what you can. Don't be greedy. That's all I can say. Our elders are very stern and strict, and they not. My papa don't tell me everything. He tells me what I need to know and how I need to know it, and that's it, and that's all. I've asked too many questions. Now I'm stepping my line. So you just got to talk to them and get where they at. That's all I can say. All elders are elders for a reason. The reason how they are, I can't tell you. But
Mm-hmm.
they've been through a lot of shit now. My grandpa told me about his times in Mississippi and how he had to pick cotton for a white tea man. His mama was cleaning house for that same white tea man, and how he would get abused by that same white tea man. So I've heard stories, and I know how it went down in the 50s and the 60s and in the 60s and the 70s. So, you know, get what you can, you know? That's all I can say.
I recently, last month, did a interview with my grandmother, and she told me how her and her brother was second oldest, and my grandmother, they used to pick cotton. And how what they would do is they would fill the bag up halfway, put some water in it, not to where it drenches the cotton in the bag, but just enough to make it a little heavier. And they would put more cotton on top and give it to the white tea men and get paid more because the bag was heavier than what it actually was. And she would call it cheating. And she was like, they never found out. And they got away with it. Did you have a story like that with your grandfather picking cotton?
Shit, cheated, no. But he played everything by the book. Um, I know some other stories. There was a time when he went to the man's house to get his pay for the week, and he wasn't there. His younger son, was there, and the boy told my grandpa, N word, you know how I talk, nigga. You ain't supposed to be up here. You supposed to go through the back. So my grandpa said, "Oh, I'm just looking for your son, your daddy." He said, "He ain't here." So my grandpa looked around, slapped the boy, and said, "Don't you ever call me a nigga again." A couple hours later, his big brothers were chasing my grandpa down the street, and my grandpa had to jump into a damn graveyard. You know, in the grave, he jumped into there, and it was late at night. So they followed him, but they didn't catch him. You know, that was the grace of God because they were trying to hang him. But that wasn't just him. His brothers, they went through stuff like that. You know, my uncle LT, he almost got hanged. And they had to send him to California because of it. My uncle CT, they almost tried to get him. They almost got a lot of people in my family, which is why we live in California today.
That happened with my dad's mom. Everybody know I call her my great grandmother. She's my grandmother, but I call her great grandmother. That's just how I grew up calling her. My uncle, my dad's brother, he and y'all know my auntie, I call her my grandma. That's just how I grew up, y'all. So when I was talking about the whole cotton story, that was my grandma, my uncle, and my auntie. Okay, but my grandma, my great grandma, my uncle, it's the same people. They're all my dad's brothers, and his mom, basically, and sister. So my dad's brother, my uncle, he had basically knocked the white tea man upside his head, and lo and behold, he was a part of the triple K. That's K in sign language, y'all. Okay, and they basically disguised them, put them on the bus, and shipped them off to Chicago. And about an hour later, my family took the next bus and met them up here, and that's how my family ended from Mississippi into Chicago. So a lot of people have stories like that. Some of us have stories of family members moving to like Ohio or California and stuff like that due to like jobs, working in industrial fields. So it's not always because of running from people trying to get them.
That is true. My great grandpa, the one that's not my grandma's biological dad, he came here because his his cousin owned a mechanic shop out here. So he became a mechanic and learned the trade. Then he sent for his family. So he came here like 2 years before the rest of them came out here. And then my great grandpa, he moved out here because of the racial tension that was going on in Louisiana. You know, they stole his land and they tried to, unalive him and his family. So he bumped out and left, as quick as he could. And my family ain't scary, y'all. They just want to live. At that time, a lot of stuff was going on, and you just feel alone, and people don't want to help you out. Like there were situations, and I listened to my family stories. I sat down and I got as much as I can from whoever was living. And my family talks. They talk a lot. I talk a lot. So I had to get it from somewhere. So, you know, they shared a lot of stories with us. They gave me the whole rundown, how it happened, when it happened, who did it, and how they did it. some of that stuff wasn't nice, so they had to leave. They needed to leave so they could take care of the babies that was coming up in the next generation. My moms, my grandmas, and all of them who was born after that.
So it's survival tactics, basically, for the
Yeah, man.
bloodline.
For the
It's not like
bloodline.
the same as crossing the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean. You just move into a whole nother area, still on your homeland or home continent. But I'm glad that you mentioned the land. For those who's doing their genealogy and they come across land patterns, what is one way that they can check that that land pattern actually belongs to their family?
Oh, this is beautiful. And land patterns will help you get the shit you deserve back. You know, my family's we still fighting. One of my lands is owned by this. Who owns it? It's a either a factory, a warehouse, or a gas station. It's one of the three, or all three. But they all live in Grant Parish. That's where my family. So Natchitoches wasn't just Natchitoches. It was also Grant Parish. There's a couple other parishes. So we own land in Grant Parish, and a lot of that land was stolen by YT cousins. They sold it to another YT person, and you know our asses is grass. And plus, we moved to California, so it was really just like F y'all. So use those land patterns to grab that stuff. Sue. You could sue. You could grab your stuff and get your stuff back. My cousin's going through it right now. You know, there's ways to do it. Some people don't like to do it this way. Do it that way. I don't know all the answers because I'm not no lawyer. Just talk to a lawyer. There's many lawyers out here that's in our community that will fight for you and help you. Help you. My cousins speak to them every single day. All you got to do is just open up your mouth. A closed mouth don't get fed. These are stuff we always say to each other. Use these sayings to our advantage. You know, don't just use these documents. Use your common sense. Another thing, there's a website. I don't know it off the top of my head, but it is connected to Ancestry. If you look at your land patterns, click open. It might
Oh,
take you
the
to that.
Management Bureau.
Yes, thank you, Land Management Bureau. If you go there, you put in your ancestors' information, names, plots. Find the longitude, latitude, the coordinates of your ancestors' lands. Put that in there. Figure out who owns it now, and try to get it back. There's a long step to it. I could probably talk to my cousin and I'll give you all those steps and you could bring it out one day, C3. But there's a whole thing to it. So once I get that information, I'll just give it to you and you could tell everybody how to do it.
Okay. Yes, that definitely be helpful. I know there's another website. I can't think of the name either, but you get the coordinates off of the land patterns and you put it in this website and it shows it's supposed to tell you like the longitude and latitude and exactly where it's at, and I think it's supposed to give you like a 3D version of what the land looks like.
Yeah.
So that's
And it
another.
greens it out for you, it highlights it and all that for you and all that. Yeah.
I can't think of the name of it because it's been a very very long time since I've been on that website. If I come across it, I'm definitely gonna bring that back out to the community because it's been a long time, about like 4 years since I've been on that website. But yes, the Land Bureau of. So when you come across land patterns, when let's say you're checking the Bureau of Land Management, right? And let's say that you come across multiple patterns with the same name on it for your ancestor, but you're noticing that it's in an area where your family is not from. What does that mean?
Mm. Look at it precisely. Make sure it aligns. Many of us was granted land in Oklahoma, Texas, um, in no man's land. So Colorado, all of that, we were granted land in those areas as well. Um, some of us was granted land where our families remained and stayed. So just make sure everything aligns, like I said earlier. Um, ways to find out if your land is in other states is through the agreements themselves. Figure out who signed it, why, figure all that out. If there's a person on there that states why they gave you that land, look at that person will. It usually tells them why they gave the said land to that person. Um, typically that's a child. A father gave that to their child. I've seen it. You know, I've seen it where a person was from Georgia and they were granted land in Oklahoma that was given to them by their father. So just look at it through there. The state, the government gave us land. Some of us received reparations way before all of us did. So just check your records, make sure it all aligns. That's all I can say.
I agree with that. Let's say that someone has an admixture of European, and they're finding out that this person had land that was granted to them somewhere in the area, let's say like Carolina, North or South Carolina. But we know historically that land would technically belong to whatever tribe is there. What do you think that person should go about? Do you think they should go and claim that land for that family? Or do you think that they should go claim that land and return it to the tribe that is there? Or look and see who was in that area and give that land back to that family before it got into the European hands?
They should give it to, if it's a European, they should give it back. That's part of the reparations. I don't want no white man money. I'm gonna be real honest with y'all. I want my land. I want what my ancestors lived on for thousands of years. Fuck they money. I'm being honest, I can make more with my land than with their money. I can grow fruits and vegetables that could help me and my family survive. So get your land, you know. In my situation, I have white tea cousins, quote unquote, that live on the land and they use that to their advantage, but it's not theirs. So, they like to use the name games. In Louisiana, a lot of us have. You will find one family with 12 members. They all have the same name. You know, I'm Chief Lavors the third. I'm named after people. So, um, they like to use that to their advantage. Play the name game with them. Well, this is my ancestor. This is their land, and I have all the records to prove it. You need to leave, or I'm calling the police to have you leave. Escorted out. There's ways you could do it, man. There's ways you could do it. If you have the paperwork, do it. People gonna fight you. Now, are you gonna fight back? Or are you just gonna put your gloves down? That's the question for you,
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is the question. Are you gonna fight? How are you gonna fight? 'Cause like you say, you don't know how people may react. They may come out with some weapons, So in that case, what do you do? Do you put your gloves down? Do you go get law enforcement? Do you have them served? There's many options to go about it. So I think that's a great idea. If you find a land patent through a white tea and it was granted in a whole different state, and that whole different tribe was there, I would say, like the boy said, try to find the family that was there before the white tea came and give it back to them. That'll be a part of their reparations, So I definitely agree with that. So
Miss Tisha's right. Me personally, if we gotta pick and choose, I'm picking land. I want my land, but I do want some money. Don't get me wrong. I was just talking.
Yeah, because the money's gonna help support what you need on the land, but at the same time, the land is what's going to bring the money as well. But you will
Right,
need money
right.
to get, like, let's say you want to turn your land into a farm. You're gonna need the money to build the barn, to build the stables for the horses, the tools you would need to garden and till the land. So yes, you are right, Miss Tisha. Um, there was another question I wanted to ask you, and it just slipped my mind. Oh, I remember. So when doing your genealogy, we hear all the time, you only want to claim the 5 civilized tribes. Those people owned slaves. So when doing your genealogy, how can you find out if your ancestor was owned by the 5 civilized tribes, or if they was the Indian in the 5 civilized tribe that owned slaves?
So this is the funny part. I always say that the 5 civilized tribes, or at least the names, didn't they never existed. You know, hear me out. People be like, "What you talking about?" when I say this shit, but we're not Cherokee. We're not Gato. We're not Muskogee. We're not none of those names. Those are all made up. If y'all knew it or not. Um, I'm a Nakadish. I'm not a Gato. A Gato was the name that the French gave my people. I'm an Ebadachi. I'm a Gusa. You know, I'm multiple tribes. I'm multiple bands. I'm multiple families. However you want to call it, I don't care. That's your prerogative. Um, but I'm multiple. Figure out which people you belong to. So if you are quote unquote Muskogee, find the actual tribes you belong to. There's no such thing as a Muskogee, but there's a such thing as a Coosa. You know, there's no such thing as a Cherokee, but there's a such thing as a Seneca. We was just talking about this earlier, C3. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there's do your research and make sure it matches your family ancestry. I just found this out a couple days ago, but if you find out if your family told you that you was Blackfoot, you may be Saponi and other tribes that comes from the East Coast. So go by what your family said, but also go by the records and what the map said back in those days. We have journals. A lot of us are scholars. Look at the information that you have at your disposal. Use it to do your tree. You know, we don't just have to read them on live. We could actually use this information to do our personal trees. You know, it's just do it the right way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so with that, do you think people should put some of their oral history in the, you know how on Ancestry you can put in their story on the information page? You know how it'd be like, oh, Marianne was the first daughter of Joseph Johnson and um, Emma Smith. You know what I'm saying? And you can like put in the oral. Do you think people should put some of their oral history on that page, or wait until someone reach out, or what do you think?
Hell no. But I'm just being honest. Hell no. But you know, it can't help somebody else. This is why we got to create private Facebook groups and put the stuff there. You know, yeah, y'all know how many white people get on Ancestry claiming your ancestors? I
A
see it
lot, a
all
lot.
the. We
I
was just
have
talking about
seen it
somebody that
with
did
my
it.
tree. You
We was just talking
yes,
about somebody that did it. You know.
you
Just be
remember we was going
careful.
through my tree and we found how my grandmother Marietta, how the people there was Europeans claiming her mother, which was her mother's name was Jane DeBose. And you were saying that she was most likely a French Indian, meaning that during the French rule they was calling them French Indians because of that.
Yes.
And they tried to put that line all the way back in France, but when you go to them European trees and you're looking at them, the descendants doesn't add up to my tree. So what do you say? You know, obviously fact check, but what advice do you have for those who come across that obstacle when they're finding the European people claiming the people that's on their trees, but the descendants after does not match?
You already know what I'm gonna say. Do they trees? Send
Mm-hmm.
they trees to me. Shit, I'll do it for you. I'll make sure it's all accurate. You know, I love a good story. I love it. You know, I love finding out somebody ain't who they are. I love it, especially when they say I'm native.
Yes,
But you know,
that that shocked both of us because I even had, if y'all remember, some months ago I played my some of my oral history online, and my cousin said no, she was a full blooded Indian because I asked her was she French because not just because the name was a French last name, but because of me seeing Europeans trying to connect claim her and then connecting her back to France. So she was like, no, she was a full blooded Indian. So I was like, okay. So that means that when that happens, how do you think we can find the French records that confirms that this person was an Indian, but it was just under French rule?
oh, that's a good one. So the French, they were sneaky bastards when it comes to it. You gotta just look. They started calling you stuff based on how you moved. So if you were baptized, they'll put down Indian all that for you. You married a white T man, they'll put down Indian all that for you. They would do it. But if and you could be dark, it depends on how you move. You know, we call coon we there were coons in Louisiana. Sadly, there were coons in the Midwest. Th- This is all French territory. Everybody think Louisiana was just one little small, state like it is now.
All the way up
It
to
was all the way up to Quebec,
California.
Canada, all that. That's all called La Louisiane. So in La Louisiane, people were classified based on how they did stuff. So if you married white tea or got you practiced the white tea religion, you kept your classification as Indian.
But you end up receiving a French name.
Yeah, you end up receiving a French name. Your children receive French names. You become, you know, Sarah all of a sudden. And people walked in that light. I am Sarah now. You have coons that did that shit, sadly. But for most of our ancestors, they were listed as Negro, Grief, Creole, um, mulatto, or how they say it, mulata. It was stuff like that. Um, sorry. So it all depends on what they were called in the time frame and all of that. Um, the French records, you have to go to the baptismal records, go to the church. The church has all the records. I just found out recently that a lot of our records were taken to the Vatican. Yeah. So we got to go to the Vatican to get in some of those records. A lot of our records were taken to Virginia. A lot of our records were taken to South Carolina, North Carolina, over there. So I have cousins in those states that look at those records and they send them back to me or my other cousin Yakoda, my other cousin Yasminda. They all work on our trees. I have multiple cousins that are helping me. I'm not just doing it by myself. I have cousins that's going to countries, Spain, France. They going around the United States. I have some that's going to Africa too. That's trying to look at records and see if everything's matching up. You'll be amazed by the stuff that people find. You'll be amazed.
Man,
You
I'm
know when
already
it,
knowing.
yeah. So I have connects that's all around the United States and other regions.
Yeah, I didn't know they sent. Well, obviously, I knew they sent the artifacts, but recently sending records to the Vatican, that is news to a lot of us. Wow. So let's because I've seen records where they have named people by their Indian name, and then they will have like their English name next to it. Sometimes you'll see records where it just say the English name and not the Indian name, or the Indian name and not the English name. So how can someone go about finding their ancestor that went by their Indian name before it changed to the English name or the French name or the Spaniard name in their genealogy?
That's the hardest one. Um, I would say, okay, first, we have Indian names. The nicknames that your family give you, if you knew it or not, a lot of that shit's Indian names. Bootsy, Papoose, Boosie. Um, I could go on and on. Buddha. Um,
Man.
Man, shit. All of them.
Everybody have a poo,
These cool.
redhead.
You know, my sister name is she gonna hate me for saying this, but Yonki, you know, Chocomon, she got crazy ass names, but it's a these are names that's passed down in our families. These are Indian names. If you're trying to find an Indian name, look at the nicknames that people gave them. You know, we didn't call ourselves Redbone and John Horse and Pig Water. We didn't do bullshit like that, man. I'm just,
Mama used
you
to call
know,
me Sweet Pea or
Sweet Pea.
or growing up. She wasn't my real grandma, but I grew up calling her Grandma King. She was a close friend of the family, and she gave me the nickname Sweet Pea, and my mama called me that, and then my mama also gave me the nickname Peanut. So I had like two nicknames growing up from people. So it said not pig water. So yes, that is right. I was talking to someone else in the community about the how the nicknames were Indian names, and in the culture that they would go by the English name, because if the European or the colonizer heard the Indian name, they knew what tribe to connect you to try, do what colonizers do.
Ooh, that's a good one. I never thought about that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And like I say, our American English names, think of it like a baptismal name. You know how people, like the Mexicans, they give each other Mary, Susanna, Louisa, and da. Same with us, you know. I got like 4 different names, you know. And then I got all my nicknames. Then I got all my hood. I'm playing. I don't got no hood names, but you know, we got these.
We got a nickname. And when he said that, I was like, that makes a lot of sense, and that would explain why a lot of our people did adopt English names or European names, and how maybe that's why some of our ancestors abandoned their Indian name, because like how some of our people migrated to different areas in the what we call today the United States, it was to preserve their bloodline and their lineage. So, but like we do, we always practice our culture. We found ways to still practice that, but we started calling it nicknames instead of Indian names. So it all
Right.
So yes. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, or did you want to receive questions from anybody in the chat? Have they come up and asked you any questions that I may not have touched on that they want to ask you?
I could take questions, but I do want to say, if you need help with your genealogy, there's a whole bunch of people on here that can help you, not just me. I'm good at what I do, but there's people that does a better job. So I'm not ever going to take it from somebody else's clout or they money or how they doing it. I'm doing genealogy for free though. You know, I have a tree that's dedicated to our people. You know, I heard that the Africans were doing this, so I said, you know what, I want to do it first. So if you want your tree in my hands, if you trust me enough to do it, I'm here for you. I'm always here for my people. You know, first thing first, I'm here for my people. So if you need some help and you look like me or one of my sisters, I fucks with you already. So just hit me up. I'm always here for you. You know, do your trees right. You know, we need more accuracy and perfection when it comes to this stuff, because a lot of people want to sue us and put us down and shut us up. I want to keep talking. I want us to keep talking and keep putting the information out there. My family been doing it for years. A lot of people almost passed away because of this stuff. I'm not going to shut up. I don't want y'all to shut up. Genealogy speaks more value than any person on this app. Trust me, I've seen it. Genealogy gave my people our land back. Genealogy gave me my tribal affiliation. Genealogy has gave me the power to speak over my people's history and heritage and culture, and no one can tell me shit. No Native American, nobody, because it's mine, and I have the documentation to prove me. I don't have no document to prove y'all and the general statements and all of that, but I have something to talk about what my ancestors went through, what my ancestors had to put up through, what my ancestors have seen. I have those records, and you can too. I'm not just going to talk and boast. You could boast too. You could talk about your heritage and stuff like that, but you got to do your genealogy right. That's all I got to say.
All right. Well, there's someone who's been waiting. Oh, they just retracted the request. I was about to let them up. So, did anybody want to come up and ask any questions to Lavors that I may have missed? You are welcome to hit the box and come up. Let me open up this at the space so people can hit the box and come up. If not, we're just going to end it right there. The panel is open for questions because I may have missed something and that, you may have a question in the chat for Lavors, or it may be something that Lavors has said and you want a little bit more information on it. So if you have any questions, go ahead and hit the box and I'll let you up, or one of the mods will let you up. If not, we're just going to end the live here. I will be uploading this as a podcast version on YouTube. And when I do, obviously I'll post it for you guys so you guys can hear it. It's going to be two versions. It's going to be playback and the podcast version for those who want to watch it, or those who just want to listen to it while they're, maybe at work doing chores. Probably get that up in the next couple of days. So does anybody want to come up? I do not think so. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. The next interview will be with Tay. Some of you guys know him as Tay Tay on this app, or Tay Tay 3. We'll be talking about DNA. I do want to get multiple people on DNA because there are people who do look in different things on DNA. So we're going to be talking to him. I believe his is tomorrow. If not, if we need more time for it, we can always push it back to next week as well. So on that note, y'all have a wonderful night. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for coming in, Lavors, and sharing genealogy tips and sharing a little history on your tribe so people can learn about a tribe that they never heard of tonight.
Yes, thank you for this. I appreciate you, C3.
You too. Y'all have a wonderful night, y'all. It's your piece of La Chica.
Wake up! You're getting comfortable!